Did you ever play Journey? You travel through a desolate and lonely landscape, eventually to meet another lonely traveler in a shared moment of connection with a random stranger somewhere around the world. Where the game uses technologies and systems of the medium to connect you on a journey to reveal deeper truths about life. Or maybe it was Nier Automata. After a deep and depressing dive into meaning and existence within a nihilistic and apocalyptic world, only to reach Ending E, where all the pieces finally come together in a cathartic moment of emotional release. Where a game uses structures, narratives, and even different gameplay to allow an individual to better understand themselves and their place within the world. Maybe, for you it was Rez, a fast-paced but still somehow meditative euphoria of lights, sounds, and motion, all working in unison to bring you closer to a feeling of synesthesia, where the aesthetics and design aim to take the user into a different mental place altogether. These moments, and more, may have led you to one conclusion: games are an amazing form of artistic expression. Well, are they? I am Kevin Pryor, a senior lecturer in the Game Design and Production Department at DigiPen Institute of Technology, Singapore. I welcome you to join me on our journey of games as a medium for artistic expression, where we will explore the history of this discussion, improve our understandings of the medium, and plan strategies to overcome the perils along our way as we chart a destination towards the future. Our journey begins in the year 2007. The first Assassin's Creed was released and Beyoncé had begun her ascent to superstar status. And two small experimental games are released: The Marriage by Rod Humble and Passage by Jason Rower. The Marriage is a simulation about the complex balance of maintaining a marriage using systems to model social connections and obligations. Passage is about moving through life, making decisions, processing loss, working as a meditation on the human condition. Yes, in a very tiny space, but this is intended to convey the limitation of our ability to see all possibilities of the future. These are both notable for attempting deeper meaning in their subject and the creative approach that more modeled fine arts approach rather than how game creators generally work. As such, they are widely considered to be the first true games as artistic expression. That is not to say that prior games did not contain moments of artistic expression. Games like VibRibbon, with its quirky and distinct aesthetic. Ico, which created an atmosphere-rich world where a meaningful connection is established with your companion. Or Chrono Trigger, where a time-traveling party worked to save the world from an ecological disaster of sorts. These games and more were pushing the medium into new depths of story, aesthetics, and even gameplay. Basically, games are already becoming art, so to speak. What The Marriage and Passage really did, though, was establish an audience and interest in more artistic-focused game experiences, of which early games, such as Braid and Flower, pivoted on to really introduce a new type of game: games with meaning. Braid took you on yet another time-traveling adventure, this time one of a more personal loss and acceptance. Flower, the precursor to Genova Chin's later game Journey, took you on an aesthetically and emotionally calming meditative adventure. You were no longer just a hero slaying monsters in a fantasy land. Now creators could explore complex subjects with increased expressive range and nuance. But clever creators did not stop there. They continued to explore the possibilities provided by the medium. Some creators looked to darker or more socially reflective themes. Limbo explored a dark and decaying world as you uncover more about the sinister truths about the past. This War of Mine focuses on civilians trying to survive during the war and attempt to reframe the wartime narrative. Some creators, though, look to the fine arts for inspiration to give distinct aesthetics and artistic vibe. Okami drew inspiration from Sumi ink landscape paintings from Japan to create the feeling of exploring a painting and directly link the game to its cultural heritage. Manifold Garden looked to the worlds of MC Escher for inspiration to make mind-bending puzzles and visuals. Instead of the arts, other creators looked to pull concepts from theater and film to find new ways to work with their narratives. Death Stranding makes use of both film and game techniques to tell a haunting tale of adversity and perseverance. Before Your Eyes utilizes a player's ability to focus by giving brief glances of memories that dissipate when the user blinks. Some creators would even turn towards their own stories and lived experiences to share more personal and meaningful stories with their players. That Dragon Cancer uses the medium of gaming to tell a tragic story of losing a child to cancer. Depression Quest aims to simulate life for someone suffering with depression. This is to both educate and to show others that they are not suffering alone. These are just a few of the many projects and styles that employ artistic expression to convey meaningful ideas and aesthetics. Each year, more and more games are released that any fan of the games will tell you are some of the most impactful pieces of art that they have personally experienced. Games have also been featured in a number of museums and exhibits around the world. So this means, as a medium, we've made it. Congratulations! We have made it to museums. Thus, games have been widely accepted as a valid artistic medium where we can freely express ourselves. Right? Right? This brings us to the old chestnut of discussion, are games art? Are games art is an old and frankly tired debate that comes up every few years or so, generally amongst people who aren't really qualified to be discussing the topic in the first place. And because I like to be controversial and unqualified to discuss topics, I'm going to say that no, I don't think games are art. In fact, I would not consider most of the games I just showed you as what we would generally be considered works of art. But I don't think are games art is the right question to be asking. Are games a valid means of artistic expression? To that, I would say absolutely yes. And they should be treated as valid as any other medium for artistic expression, such as film, theater, music, visual arts, and more. This difference between art and artistic expression needs to be clarified. In return to painting, when asked if political art is art, Gao Xingjian gave an open response. He defined art as a collection of decisions the creator makes. If your decisions are for the expression of the piece itself, you are making art. However, if you're moving towards trying to achieve a political message, you're making decisions to ensure your message comes across. Hence, you're actually moving away from the actual art. This always struck me as the best way to explain artistic expression, as one where your decisions are made for the piece itself rather than outside considerations. The more decisions are influenced by your audience, technical limitations, platform restrictions, accessibility, the more you're moving away from the art. Artistic expression is in your ability as a creator to freely express yourself within a chosen medium. And meaning is not necessarily art. This is a concept that is really needed in order to discuss this topic. You can create depth and meaning without creating art. While the reference games are all wonderful and meaningful experiences, they mostly all exist as consumer-based products, thus moving away from pure artistic expression and away from being pure art. But now look, I've fallen into that what is art trap. A topic scholars, philosophers, and internet forum dwellers will debate for eons. What is a far better use of our time is to look at how we, as prospective creators of games, can make use of the medium for our own artistic expression, regardless of what the scholars may say of our pursuits. I encourage the audience to consider games as a potential creative medium to pursue for your own artistic expression. I personally find games to be one of the more promising and interesting mediums to explore from a creative perspective. For starters, they are an amalgam of a bunch of other mediums, which gives you a lot of expressive range. As anyone who has played a game can attest, they have an ability to really suck you in and immerse you within the space, which is a great opportunity for any artist to explore. They also have this interesting ability to foster direct dialogues with the audience, which allows you, as a creator, to directly communicate with your audience. Plus, it is a very new medium with lots of unexplored creative ground, which should excite any creative, bored, and looking towards the avant-garde. Have I sold you on trying to express yourself with games? If so, here are 7 key components that you get to play around with. Each of these open up a different way to express, some of which are unique to the medium itself. Let's take a look, shall we? The idea of agency is that the audience should have some measure of control or impact on how the piece progresses. Basically, the very important game concepts of decisions. Ideally, decisions that matter. These choices help to create a more personalized experience for your audience. It can also be very liberating to work with as a creator, as you can really look at the topic from multiple viewpoints, which allows you more opportunities to explore your own thoughts on the subject. In Frostpunk, you need to make some very hard decisions on how to survive as a community that may show you a lot more about how you view humanity as a whole, and allows you to think more about what you would do in those situations and what you value. It is important to understand that all games are fundamentally about a communication with the audience, much like other creative mediums. Where the communication differs is largely via the input given directly by the user, which translates into feedback by the piece. The player performs actions, the game translates those actions into feedback. That feedback then gives the player something to process. An important design lesson is to understand that you are, in a way, having a constant dialogue with your player. Once you understand this, you can better play around with the concept to achieve deeper and more nuanced discussion. Papers, Please is on the surface a game about working as an immigration agent. However, that basic dialogue morphs over time into a much more complicated situation about an authoritarian nation and its impact on the people, and how this oppression affects all citizens, including the player. In many ways, communication in games is more akin to a book or a long-running TV show. The more you engage, the more you connect to the characters. This helps you get attached. The more you get attached, the more connection you have to the product, and the more you are open to deeper meaning and emotional responses. This is not new to games, but games, A, can be quite engaging for long periods of time, and B, allows you to connect through other aspects than the narrative. For example, in Final Fantasy IV, when Tella sacrifices himself to save the team, it's not just the character's sacrifice that is felt, but how this death directly impacts how the player plays the game going forward. And no, I did not use that other famous Final Fantasy death to avoid spoilers. This brings me to the major difference between games and other mediums. We have rules and mechanics. For simplicity, we can think of rules as constraints for actions, and mechanics as the actions themselves. Arguably one of the most important aspects of the medium, they define the expressive space allowed by the piece. However, for creative expression, they can take new light as a way to directly or subtly express your creative intent. Celeste is a game both about challenging platform gaming and overcoming depression. Most of the game plays as a difficult climb up a mountain, with both the mechanics and the difficulty directly linked to the struggles with dealing and ultimately overcoming depression. In game design, we emphasize the core game loop, because at their core, games are about establishing patterns with the user. Ultimately, this is done for the user experience as it helps our users better understand how the game works. It also allows for a safe and comfortable routine, which helps our players engage with the game. As a creator, establishing patterns is kind of neat, but honestly, for me, I really like those destructive breaks in the patterns that's what I'm most interested in. Undertale is structured like a typical role-playing game. Fight the monsters, get stronger, and so on. However, you can subvert the typical pattern by choosing not to fight, and thus not to engage with the core loop, with this passive route leading to different conclusions and different understandings for the player. Games also provide one of the most fascinating potential creative spaces, the world of simulations. These allow us to model systems and behaviors to explore a variety of relationships from societal to psychological. As a creator, you can then make a simulation which allows you to observe how things play out. There is a world of creative potential here that many of the better artistic expressive games, such as The Marriage, make heavy use of. In Facade, you are helping to mediate a falling apart marriage, which is modeled as a complex system that plays out based on players' decisions and the couple's feelings. And, just like all creative pursuits, there is an aesthetic feel of a piece. Like movies, a lot of this comes from the audio, visuals, camera, lighting, atmosphere, etc. However, mechanics, level structures, and even the game balance may play a major role in the overall aesthetic feel of a game piece. Katamari Damacy is a game about the joys and awkwardness of growing up, where all aspects of the game feel a bit clumsy and a little bit curious. It's less about punishing and more about expression of joy over the experience, which is reflected in all parts of the game aesthetic. While there's a lot more nuance to consider, those 7 components are interesting considerations if you are thinking about games as a medium. As you work with a medium, your knowledge and understanding of these concepts will grow and adapt just like masters in any other creative medium. Maybe some of you even want to give it a shot. Become the next Shigeru Miyamoto. Great. But there are some things to consider before jumping in. So back in the long ago, in the prehistoric flip phones and standard definition TV days, the mid-2000s, I tried my hand at exploring this new and fascinating medium of games as a medium for artistic expression. It didn't go very well. You try showing works of art in a gallery with your tank of a laptop, but at least the children were amused. My failure and significant time to reflect has helped me to define some issues with the medium faces going forward. To start, the term games is not great and does not accurately reflect the expressive range of the medium. I've heard the terms immersive media and digital interactions tossed around, but games will always stick and will likely never go away. This is problematic as it sets expectations from all audiences. Game fans expect to play games, while non-gamers will be turned away expecting your work to be complicated and alien for them. It also has a lot of negative connotations in the media and within art circles as more of a lowbrow type of creative expression. Which leads to the second problem. The art world at large does not accept games as a creative medium. This isn't new to games. At one point, Shakespeare wasn't art, now it's the absolute pinnacle of the theatrical arts. Van Gogh wasn't art, and now he's a master painter. However, this lack of recognition and validation means you will have to struggle to gain acceptance. You will likely be dismissed more than accepted. To be honest, I would just dismiss this as a concern as artists being pretentious and closed-minded, were it not for that validation has real-world consequences. While your other art friends may get grants to develop their art or get into some fancy residency in a castle in Europe, you'll most likely have to rely on self-funding, friends, families to help get your works made. You'll be working in basements or worse, in office spaces. As such, creators often turn towards the game community more than the arts community for support. But that often comes with expectations for more game and less expression, which creates this nasty loop of the arts continuing to shun games. This is a bigger issue than just the arts, as most governments, including Singapore, do not formally recognize games as artistic expression, which further limits support you can receive. To be 100% fair to the arts, there are definitely some issues with the medium itself. For starters, you must keep the audience in mind when creating. This makes those pure art decisions I talked about earlier nearly impossible. The medium is also rather complex and requires at least a basic understanding of several other mediums before you can even begin creating. This is much like working with films. This means that the learning curve is quite high and that the time to create something can be very long and often very arduous, which is all the more reason that we need better funding for the medium. So let's say you struggled through and made a beautiful game that successfully conveys your creative voice. But getting your work in front of an audience is also no easy task. The easier approach is with the game channels. However, they are most always looking for games. This means a large time commitment and the definitive gameplay. They're not looking for art pieces. You could try to show your work as an artist in a gallery or museum, but then you must work against that game bias that exists with the artistic fields. However, there are some open-minded galleries that may give you a chance here. Since there is a real lack of support for this medium, some take a more alternate route, such as using smaller parts of the arts and game culture to their advantage. This would be stuff like festivals or game jams where you can get a larger audience for your work you're doing. Regardless of your method, you will still face that issue of the medium not really being recognized. Gamers, they want games. Artists, they want whatever the modern definition of art is. And the onus comes down to you to create a valid audience for your work. It is bad form to leave a talk on a negative note, especially when the present, and especially the future, are only looking better. Games are a new medium. Using them for creative expression is even more new. It does take time for any medium to be fully understood and adapted into a culture. And things are rapidly improving for creators working with the game medium, both for commercial and for artistic expression. To start with, there are actual tools that can help you make your creative life so much easier. These can help you focus your creative expression on the piece without getting too bogged down by the technical minutiae. This includes engines to make more powerful projects. For full game engines, tools like Unity, Unreal, Godot provide robust options. For those looking for more interactive writing, tools such as Twine offer both easy-to-use tools and a full community to explore. There are also new tools like Dreams, which are designed to give all users, regardless of skills, a place to express themselves in. Part of the success of any skill or medium is in our collective ability to pass knowledge between generations. Thus, a master's techniques are carried on through the skills of their apprentice. While we do not have explicit game guilds in the modern world, we do have a wealth of knowledge available for you to tap into to hone your craft. There are a number of universities offering degrees focused on learning design, programming, production, or the arts. While these are intended more as a means to get you into the commercial games industry, it is also entirely possible to pivot your knowledge towards your own creative pursuits. If you don't have time for formal studies, fear not. There is a wealth of knowledge available online. YouTube channels such as Extra Credits, Brackeys, and Game Maker's Toolkit provide a great starting place for working with games. While sites like gdcvault.com have an enormous backlog of past industry professional talks that you can peruse. There's also a lot more options in the modern world to get your projects out there. Community events like game jams are a great way to draw some attention to your work. There are also a number of creative channels and distribution platforms like itch.io, which allows for more open hosting. As the world becomes increasingly digital, you may even find some unexpected partners to help get your work seen by more people. Games have also become a major part of our modern culture, which has helped games gain more cultural acceptance. As games proliferate in the culture, it is only a matter of time before these ideas spread into the arts and broader acceptance within artistic institutions. Plus, as more people are exposed to games, the amount and diversity of our creators will also expand, allowing for broader creative voices. It is going to take time for acceptance, but as more old folks, like me, who grew up playing games, gain more prominence in various institutions, the more the medium becomes culturally accepted as a valid form of creative expression. I want to end this talk by reiterating that games are a medium for artistic expression. There is a wild and interesting world of creative expression to be found within the medium. It is best to think of games not as some kind of cultural oddity, but rather as just another creative medium to explore that offers some unique artistic possibilities for creators. And this concludes our journey of arts and expression and of games. I hope this gives you the courage and the passion to pursue your interest in the medium in the future. Or at least I hope you will think just a little bit deeper about the medium next time you sit down with your favorite game. Thank you for joining this online talk with DigiPen Institute of Technology Singapore. For more information on other DigiPen Singapore programs with the ArtScience Museum, please visit the information in the description below. Goodbye and thank you.